Nowadays, a huge number of people use Apple technology, such as iPhones, and there is also a lot of people using Microsoft. These are two companies that have completely changed our lives. Now, many people cannot live without Apple or Microsoft. But how were these two great companies created? Who are their founders? In this video, I will tell you about the founders and how these companies were built. This video will be especially useful for beginners who needs more motivation. After all, despite all the difficulties, these guys were able to build such a great corporations. Be sure to watch this video to the end. Let's start with Apple and its creator Steve Jobs. The idea of creating a computer for everyone was fundamental to Steve Jobs' business. Along the way, he turned Pixar into one of the most famous animation studios, founded Next, and of course, built the Apple empire. Jobs is often called the father of the digital revolution, but his difficult character and the desire for perfection often become an obstacle on the way for a future development. Let's learn in details about the life of one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time. Stephen Paul Jobs was born in 1955 in San Francisco. His father was a Syrian and his mother was German. The union of young students was not accepted by their families, so Steve was given up for adoption. The foster parents brought the boy to Santa Clara. Now, it's also known as the Silicon Valley due to the many headquarters of high-tech companies. Young Steven grew up among engineers involved in the development of electronic devices. This formed his personality and stimulated his interest in this field. At the age 13, Jobs dared to call William Hewlett, co-founder and president of Hewlett & Packard, to ask for details for a school project. Impressed by the teenager's courage, Hewlett provided him with the parts he needed. But he also invited him to intern at the company. It was there that Jobs became friends with Steve Wozniak. It is important to remember this man, as Wozniak played a significant role in Jobs' life. After the high school, Jobs entered Reed College in Portland, Oregon, but dropped it after the semester. He became fascinated with Eastern spiritual practices, and to pay for a trip to India, he worked part-time developing video games at Atari. Soon, he was able to travel to India, and when he returned to the United States, he met Wozniak again. He was in the process of building compact computer. For Wozniak, it was just a hobby. However, the visionary Jobs saw a huge commercial potential in this device and convinced his friends to start a common business. In the 70s, they set up a store in his parents' garage, naming the company Apple. To raise the initial capital of $1,350, Jobs sold his Volkswagen van and Wozniak sold his Hewlett-Packard calculator. Although the first Apple I prototype sold mostly to enthusiasts, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak earned enough to improve the design. A few years later, they introduced the Apple II, the first personal computer with the color graphics and a keyboard. By the 80s, competition had increased, and sales of the new third version of the computer were falling. That all changed after Jobs visited the Xerox PARC lab. There, he saw how scientists were working on the graphical interface, computer mouse, laser printing, and object-oriented programming. Jobs became obsessed with the idea of the graphical interface. A short time later, he introduced the Macintosh. It was the first personal computer with the graphical interface and mouse control. This product revolutionized the market. However, even here it was a disappointment. The cost of device of more than $2,000 was too high for the average customers. Sales were falling, and Steve refused to admit mistakes. Tense relations with CEO John Scully led to the fact that Jobs left the company. It was a hard hit for him. Apple was his life. But after 4 months of traveling and searching for new ideas, he found it courage to come back with new plans. Steve founded Next, a company that was developing a computer platform for universities. I believe that persistence is half of what separates successful entrepreneurs from unsuccessful ones, Jobs once said. In the same year, the enterprising businessman acquired a computer animation company from George Lucas. Together with a team of specialists, he transformed it and named it Pixar. The first 5 years, Jobs sold equipment, but the cartoon created by the studio unexpectedly won an Oscar. It was a short film called The Teen Toy. Soon, there were a product called RenderMan for 3D animation, thanks to which Pixar created promotional videos. They attracted the attention of the well-known Disney studio. The result of their cooperation was the famous Toy Story. After the release of the cartoon, Steve's capital grew up to $1.5 billion. In relations with people, Steve was as demanding as to work. He expected maximum dedication from his employees, and at the same time could humiliate or insult some of them. Despite this, the innovator was deeply respected, though feared. His approach to interacting with people was reflected in his words, "I don't try to be pleasant to others. My job is to make them become better." By the way, do you know how Steve hired employees? One of the most famous methods of selection was the riddle that Jobs used in the hiring process. This test was firstly used during his return to Apple. Candidates were shown a sequence of letters of the alphabet, like A, B, C, D, where the next letter were replaced by the bottom line. They were required to guess what should follow next. Interestingly, the correct answer was not the letters E, but F. This seemingly simple test allowed Jobs to build a team that took the company to the next level. Back in the 90s at Apple, Jobs showcased the best of his products. It all started with the iMac and iBook, followed by own operating system. Jobs became a CEO of Apple, opened a chain of retail store, and introduced products such as the iPod and iPhone. There also appeared iTunes media player and iMovie video editor. In 2010, the iPad tablet was released, but by that time, Steve Jobs was already seriously ill. A year later, he submitted his resignation as he could no longer perform his duties. Steve Jobs not only raised Apple to the top of the technology industry, but also made it a ladder for all American business. Many claim that he was not an inventor, but he was able to successfully use and improve other people's ideas. He had the unique intuition that allowed him to identify which products should be successful. We have more interesting videos about cryptocurrency, finance, and earnings on our channel, so go ahead and watch them. I really hope that from this video you get to know Steve and Bill way better. Give us a like and subscribe. This is the Token team. See you soon.